Happy Thursday. Hey, 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 it's Thursday. Or let's see how my Portuguese is going. Quinta-feira, right? Thursday. Yes. Hey, how y'all doing? All right, it's good to see all of you. Let's see who's first in the chat. Hey, hey, hey. Jess A was first in the chat today. How you doing, Jess? Boa noite to our team in Portugal for bringing together uplifting and inspiring people to share their experiences and journeys with all of us. Muito obrigada. Oh, thank you. Awesome, awesome. Hey, you got another Blaxit Global Passport member, Marguerite, in the house. Hey, hey, hey. And another Passport member. Hey, 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 hey. Y'all are repping strong tonight. I appreciate it. Hey, Helen. Hey, Tanya. Pisces Pratt is in the house. Alexandria. D. Hey, hey, hey. Moni, how y'all doing? How y'all doing? Well, for those of you who do not know me, I am Krishan Wright. I'm the founder of Blaxit Global and the host of the Blaxit Global podcast, which is currently in season 6. I lead a community of empowering and inspiring, aspiring, and actual Black expats who, either from fear or frustration, decided to take the road less traveled and pursue a life abroad. And so it's my honor to bring these voices and stories for you to listen to. We have a new episode on the Blaxit Global podcast dropping on Monday. But if you are a member of our YouTube channel membership, you've gotten it already, residency visa status, or a member of Blaxit Global Passport, you've already gotten that episode. And it's a doozy. I kind of teased it a little bit last week. I'm going to keep the rest of y'all in suspense, but definitely be on the lookout for Monday's episode to kick off Black History Month, because it'll be the first episode of February. So good stuff right there. Wanted to, hey, another Passport member in the house. Hey, boa noite. Hey, how y'all doing? Wanted to share some announcements before we bring on our special guest for tonight. And so we have, let's see, our Nomad Noir. Nomad Noir, for those of you who do not know, we're hosting Blaxit Global, a scout house in Lisbon, Portugal, where I live. I probably should have said that too. So I live in Lisbon, Portugal, for those of you who do not know. And I am hosting a scout house for people who want to scout Portugal. And so that will take place in August. There is either a 3-week stay or a 1-week stay. I will show you around, take you, around the sites in the city, but things that you really need to know if you want to live here long term, right? And I say long term because some people don't want to pack up and leave entirely, although 2024 in the US is looking a little scary right now. But some people want to come for a few months at a time. And so this is your opportunity to kick the tires, to ask questions of someone who lives here. We have some fun things planned. And so I'm excited for this. We will be closing down registration for Nomad Noir this month so that I can focus on getting things ready for our amazing guests who will be here and hanging out with me and the crew. And let's see, what else did I want to mention? Oh, if Nomad Noir does not fit your schedule, you also have an opportunity to hang out with us, because Blaxit Global and Our Black Utopia are combining forces once again. The first time was during the Move to Portugal Virtual Summit that took place in November. But this time we are having a boat party, baby. We're going to do a meetup in Juneteenth. So I'm dropping the link So, for those of you who want to get your ticket, you can get your ticket with last year's price before we jack it up because look, inflation be inflating, okay? But you're going to want to be on this boat. We have a lot of fun things planned. So, come in June, stay, hang out. Lisbon, Portugal. So apologies if my audio and video don't sync up completely tonight, but we are experiencing some not so nice weather today and tomorrow. So let me think about any other announcements I need to make. Oh, yes, one last one. So for those of you who did not make the Move to Portugal Virtual Summit, but you are interested in moving to Portugal, I will drop that link in here in this here chat, and then we will get getting. All right. So I see some other folks in here. Yes, Greta, and my turn. Yes, look, you already know. Let me tell you, I gotta tell you about my next guest, but I'm gonna bring her up first. Ask before I bring her up. I do have one little favor to ask. It is going to be very helpful to us tonight to have you put a Q before your question, if you have a question to ask. This way I can see what the question is and kind of distinguish that from the chat roll. So really would love it if you would help with that tonight. That would be awesome. All right, I see Malcolm and Stephen in the house. Hey, 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 y'all. So with that, without further ado, I'm going to bring up my next guest. Hello, Miss Olivia.
Hello, hello.
Hey, hey, hey. I've been so excited for tonight. And we were talking before we went live about your fan following. And so your fan following is already in the comments.
Oh my gosh.
Right,
That was a
Olivia?
surprise.
Olivia is amazing and an inspiring lady. Yes, you are. And
Aw.
I knew that from our first conversation, and I asked you, and you were so gracious to accept my invitation to talk tonight. And so I'm delighted to have you. And again, not surprised by the comments and the emails that I've gotten as soon as people saw that it was you. And I was like, y'all know she's amazing. So I'm honored to have you
Aw.
here.
Well, thanks for having me and giving me this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. So, for those people who may not know, Olivia has a visual impairment, and I'm going to give her the opportunity to introduce herself and tell you about who she is.
Okay. Well, um, I'm Olivia. I live in Ohio and have done so my whole life. And I'm visually impaired, and I have been for most of my life. And I am right now planning my Blaxit to Portugal. And it has been a long and winding road. There's still a lot left to go, but I'll get there.
Oh, yeah, I know you will. I mean, because you already plugged in, so there's no doubt that this is going to happen. But it's interesting because when we connected, you had reached out to me, and we were talking about. I think your interest was at that point the Scout House Nomad Noir that I
Mhm,
mentioned earlier,
mhm.
and I was like, and you mentioned that you were blind, and I'm like, wow, okay. I was like, let's have a conversation, and we spoke for probably a little over an hour that day, and I was just had so many questions and you provoked me in such a meaningful way because there were things that I, as a sighted person, realized that I don't have certain considerations. I had consideration sets about my move, and I think there are things that are just universal.
Mhm.
But as I was listening to you talk about not only your rationale, but the considerations, I was like, wow, I was really inspired. And it made me really rethink my own environment here as I move through Portugal, because there are just certain things that you take advantage of, you take for granted when
Mhm.
it doesn't apply to you. And so I also want to thank you for bringing that to my awareness. Um, so, one of the things that you had mentioned in our conversation was that you were having difficulty finding information about being a blind person in Portugal, or just blind people moving abroad.
Yes. Oh my goodness, Krishan. Like anything that I found was always so negative. It was always very much like, how do we take care of blind people? Or here are the stipends that this country provides. There was never anything like inspiring or like if I searched, for example, if I searched moving as a woman or a black woman or an American, whatever, I could find information that helpful information, like here are some steps, here's what people have done. That is not out there for blind people. They do have things for, like retirees, and if you are receiving some sort of like social security and things like that, but they're not talking to those of us who are, who have maybe grown up disabled and want to live in another country. Those resources just were not out there. I was looking high and low, left and right for somebody that I could connect with or like I could follow um, for inspiration, and they just didn't exist, and it was frustrating and demoralizing. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, I can't even imagine how, like, using your words, demoralizing it is, because
Mm,
it's not as if blind people, you're a testament, right? That
yeah.
blind people also want to move abroad, right? And so
Mhm.
representation matters, and especially matters to me, which is why I created Blaxit Global, because every time I was looking for content around Black people moving abroad or being in certain communities, they weren't welcoming. It wasn't inclusive. It felt
Right.
very othering and dehumanizing, demoralizing. And
Mhm.
so when we had our conversation, you really, helped me like widen my perspective in terms of, content that is more accessible, because there is a gap in that knowledge base. And so for you, as you were trying to look for inspiration, and let me tell you right now, I know you are inspiring a lot of people right now,
Oh,
because putting yourself out there and being, sometimes we have to be the thing that we want in the world. And you showing up tonight and having this conversation with me is going to inspire someone else who is under similar circumstances or not, to realize that it is possible.
that's just my goal. If I can just help one person, even if it's just, hey, it is possible, and that's all I can help, encourage someone, that'll be enough because I didn't have that. So,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
mhm.
So somebody's probably gonna sit there like me and be curious and wonder, what are the things, or what were the things that are prompting you to want to move abroad?
So this is kind of embarrassing, but I guess not really. I guess I could chalk it up to like greater self awareness, but I've always had the pull to be elsewhere. And I've always wanted to honestly move as far away from where I was ever since I was a child. And the only place that I knew that was the furthest away from where I was Australia. And so
Wow.
I latched onto that as a little girl. And I kept saying, like, I just felt, I don't know, called, I guess would be the best thing I have or the best description I have. to go to Australia. And it wasn't until last year that I realized it wasn't Australia itself that was calling me. It was just the pull to be in another country and live
Mm.
a different style of life than I could here in the US, because I never quite fit here. Right?
How
Well,
so?
yeah. Yeah.
How so?
How so?
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. Just the expectation of what you're supposed to do never really
Mhm.
resonated. Like, yeah, I love to learn. So it was, finish school, go to college, get a degree, get a job. And I wanted to, well, one, I couldn't decide what I wanted to do in college. Let's start there. Um, and
Common problem for sure.
listen, I think I was everybody's major at one point. Um, and finally, but when I finally decided, like, this isn't working for me, I'm just racking up debt. I love to learn. I don't love college.
Mm.
Um, I was able to get out of that, but it took me a while to realize, like, this is not really what I want. This is what I was expected of me, but it's not. It doesn't. It doesn't fit. It's not aligning with who I really feel like I am inside. And I kept trying
Mm.
to make myself fit into society's expectations, and it just, I could do it for a couple of months, and then I would, like, have it go on a crying jag and just cry for 3 days straight because it just didn't fit and I didn't feel right.
Mhm. Yeah, Stephanie Perry, who's a friend of the show and the
Mhm,
platform, has a video and has talked about it multiple times on her channel, about Black excellence is killing us.
mhm,
And and it doesn't matter where you are in the economic spectrum, ability, right? Like that pressure to meet expectations, like you were saying,
mhm,
is stifling. And what winds up happening is the exhaustion from trying to contort and conform to meet an expectation that you didn't even create for yourself, right?
mm,
And so it's just like, well, who am I supposed to be? And the reason why it feels so foreign is because it isn't anything that you created. And so I always say to people, live your life by design and not by default. And when you take up the gauntlet and you're charging your forward and you're creating a life that you love, right? You can live into it, you can breathe into it, and you
mhm,
can co-create it in a magnificent way. And so that is what I see as being a very inspirational part of your story, is that you realize that, and you have a huge level of self-awareness to come to that conclusion and say, okay, you know what, it's time. And it's interesting that you chose, originally you held on to Australia, because people know with me it was New Zealand. And it was that same thing. It was that calling, like, you know what, I don't know, but this ain't it. And it was
this is not
before,
it.
right? It's like, this ain't it, and and at the time, like, I was a little kid, so I didn't have mortgage, a car payment, kids, and all that stuff. It was just
Right.
something inside that I knew that
Mhm.
was like, this isn't where I'm supposed to be. And it sounds like
Yes.
that was the same for you.
Yes. And I will say that I didn't know it was possible to leave, because the only Black people that I knew who had left the US were in the military, and they always came back. And, like, so the people that I saw living abroad were always white people.
Mm-hmm.
And I just was like, oh, I guess by that point, I was kind of used to being let down in life. So I'm like, this is just another
Mm-hmm.
thing I'll be let down in. But I kept coming back to it.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't leave me alone. And I put it off for a few years, try to conform, but it would never take. And I would the urge to move, to do something, to get out of this country and into someone else's just kept coming back in various ways. And it's funny that you say New Zealand, because at one point, girl, I was trying everybody's country. I was like, who will take me? I don't care at this point. I'm like, listen, I was so desperate at one point. I was looking at Serbia. My behind does not
Wow.
need to be in Serbia. There is nothing for me in Serbia, but I was gonna try it. Listen, I was like, if I can get there, I can get somewhere else. I don't think you should do things from desperation, but I was desperate. So,
Yeah, I know how. Look, we whether we're abroad or those of you who are still in the States, let me tell you, when you want to get out, it's just like by hook or by crook. I don't care
yes,
what I have to
ma'am.
do. And like I said, especially this year,
Oh my goodness.
there's a lot of shenanigans, and as much as I try to like distance myself from watching the news, not watching the news or consuming content, I'll say,
Yeah.
um, I have loved ones there. Plus, because of the amount of people that we serve, it is helpful to kind of keep, a pulse on what's going on. But
Right.
goodness gracious, it's like it goes from bad to worse.
It really is. The
And
shenanigans have been happening for quite some time, but
mhm.
it's gotten, because it's an election year. It's just like I don't even want to turn on TV. Like, and it doesn't even matter if you do or not. It's coming at you.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. And so one of the things that you raised also in that conversation that we had was about like content, like the limited content that you would find. You were talking
Mhm.
about wasn't inspirational, as someone who has a visual impairment, and but also like a distinguishing for like you as a Black blind woman. And so you were saying that your walk is different from someone who is not.
Mhm.
How so?
So it is. I will say that I found things about blind travelers. They were usually white men. Um, I think the two that stand out, one was from Canada, one was from the UK. And let's just keep it a buck. We walk through the world differently. Whether you if you're just talking about, where race is concerned,
Mhm.
um, and even when you add disability, there's just there are just differences that need to be accounted for, that maybe, certain people of certain demographics don't have to worry about, even when they do have disabilities, or worry about to a lesser extent. um and I wasn't finding Black blind people, and I surely wasn't finding Black blind women trying to leave the US. And what I didn't tell you, actually, is that when I first contemplated, well, I won't say first contemplated, when I put it out on social media, I posted on my Facebook, where I have a lot of blind Facebook friends, and I was like, has anyone ever wanted to move abroad?
Mhm.
Every single last person was like, why would you want to do that? This is the best place ever. Yeah, I have left the country, but it was to come to the US. And I was like, oh, guess you guys are not the people to talk to about this. So, so
Wow.
sometimes I learn slow, but not that time. And I was like, okay, so I really am, this is a thing that probably, at least in my circle, that is
Mhm.
not common. And I will say that I get it, because sometimes people are just, especially blind people, for example, in the US, like the unemployment rate for blind folks is like, it's never below 70%.
Whoa.
Yeah, never. So we're talking people who are there like, girl, I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to eat. I don't have
Mhm.
time to dream, you know.
Wow.
And just to, a lot of people do think in the blindness community that the US is the best game in town, so why go elsewhere?
Mhm.
And so I had all that, and I didn't need any more negativity from anyone else, so I stopped talking to them, at least about this.
That is so true because when you make this decision, and I've talked about it recently, I have quite a bit of press this week going in
Mm,
different outlets that I've been featured on, and talking about people that move in silence because they don't have community. They're
mhm,
usually the first in their family and the first in their peer set that have this idea, and depending on how long you've held on to this idea, or even how fortified you are, right? Like you need to have some level of armor, because I think that's one of the first times you realize how powerful and palpable American exceptionalism is.
mhm.
And even how you described how it permeates, the circles in which you move with other blind people. And they're like, no, 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 this is the best game in town. What
Mhm.
you mean? You want to leave all of this? And it's like, yeah.
I do actually.
And it's like it's so that's why I think, and I know, platforms like this, communities like Blaxit Global are so helpful,
Mm,
because it can be so isolating. And that's why we have, Blaxit Global Passport. That's why I put a lot of effort into, the workshops and the accountability groups, because at least if you're encountering that in your environment, you have a safe space, right, to
mhm.
go to get, feedback from other people, support, resources to help you, because otherwise, that's how dreams end up dying, because
Yes.
people feel like, okay, I'm the only one. And you talked about that conformity earlier, right? It's like,
Mhm.
I'm the only one that feels like this. Maybe there's something wrong with me. No one else is, mirroring that this is something that's okay to think or feel. And
Mhm.
so I need to do whatever that they want me to do to suppress that. And that's not what we're here for.
Right. I will say that it wasn't until I have to do math. Darn it. Okay. Well, the last 2 years, I'm not doing that. That I didn't realize up until like the last 2 years how important community was, because I was I was by myself, and
Mm.
the highs were really high, but the lows, oh my goodness, the lows were so
Mhm.
low, where I would just be like in a ball of like just sadness and just like really legit like just curled up into myself crying because I couldn't see how I can make this work. I couldn't see how I can make it a reality. And I just kept running into walls. And it wasn't until I actually reached out and joined a community. Shout out
Mm.
to Patricia Brooks in her career expat incubator course and all the ladies in that,
Yay!
because it wasn't until I joined that community that I really was like, okay. And it actually, even after I joined her course, it took me a few months to realize I had community and to like rely
Mm.
on them, because I was so used to going it alone. And I'd be like, oh, I'm so, sad, or I'm so, I'm not making progress, whatever. And I just wouldn't show up to the
Mm.
calls that she had. And then I'd be like, Olivia, you got into this group so you could have community. You need to rely on them. They don't know that you need help if you don't talk to them. And so um, I will say that that has been a huge difference maker in prepping me for moving toward my move to Portugal.
Wow, I love it. I love it. And I was saying it to someone the other day. I love finding out about other content creators, other communities, other people in this space, because one person cannot serve everyone, right? Nor
No,
should they. And
no.
so I come from it from a place of abundance, and so I love hearing that you found a place that validated like your experience and what you were feeling, and that you found that sense of community, because
Mhm.
that is what gives you wings, right? That is what gives you fuel to move forward. And so I'm thrilled. And so, yay, yay,
I mean,
yay.
even sometimes. Even if they're just holding my head above water, it's
Mhm.
helpful because sometimes I
Yeah,
can't do it on my own. So,
especially during the pandemic, like,
oh my gosh,
you
yes.
know, it seems it was look, let's be real, it was not that far. It wasn't that long ago, right? That we
No.
were all disillusioned by what transpired and the length of it, right? And so I think that also, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, probably compounded, right? The feelings that you were feeling.
So about that, 2020, lots of things happened in 2020.
Mhm.
Um, I I was the crying jacks that I mentioned earlier. I would go home to my apartment every day after work, and I would just drop all my stuff, and I would just fall, literally, like, I was so dramatic, but it felt that intense. I would just fall down to the ground and just cry in my living room, and I'm like, this can't be all there is to life. And so 2020, before the pandemic, like, really, like, became what it ended up becoming, I had decided I was moving to Australia come hell or high water. Like, I was going to do it. And so that required me giving up my apartment because I
Mhm.
needed to save money.
Mhm.
And so I had to move back in with my mom. And I did that right after, like, when all the lockdowns first started happening.
Mhm.
And so up until the end of 2020, it was actually going okay for me because I'm an introvert. So being sent home was like a dream for me. I did not want to be in the office. And I was able to save even more money, like transportation and stuff. So I'm just like, this is all going to my Australia fund. And then actually, at the end of 2020, two of my sisters got into a really bad car accident, and one of them
Oh
didn't
god.
survive.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. And my other sister was very badly injured. And so I just honestly threw everything away. I was like, okay, I'm not going to Australia. I can't leave because what if somebody else passes away? What if, and so I know for
Mhm.
some people that's a galvanizing factor. They're like, life is short. For me, I went the other way. I was like, I can't leave. This is all, I'll just stay here and I will make it work. But
Mhm.
again, that's not for me. Staying here is not for me. So eventually I did get back on track, but 2020 was kind of where I really started in earnest,
Mhm.
saying like, okay, no, I'm moving abroad.
Wow. And, like I said, I'm so sorry about your sister's passing
Thank you.
and and your family, the huge disruption. But what I'm grateful for is that you are able to think about your life and recalibrate it in a different way. And so as you started to recalibrate and hold on back to that dream, because like you said, for a while, you had put that dream on pause, understandably. I mean, that's a huge, huge event, life event.
Mhm.
And now that you have, this dream that you're holding on to, how are you planning on moving forward and the considerations? Because, like you said, it moved from Australia, and now you're pretty firm on Portugal. So, how are you moving forward with the planning? And I think also too, and I don't want to throw too many questions at once. Um, the familial ties, because I don't want
Mhm.
to walk away from that. Like you said, that was a huge life altering change to your family. And so as you think about, putting distance, physical distance, um, what are some of the considerations?
Okay, forgive me if I don't answer one of those because I don't remember them all. My apologies.
Don't worry, and I will. I know that was a lot word
but
salad. So
That's all right. So, the familial ties. Actually, my youngest sister is planning to move with me. So,
Oh my
she,
gosh.
I think she took me seriously back in 2020, and I was like, I'm moving. And she just called me up one day and was like, "Hey, keep me apprised. I think I'll go with you." That's literally what she said. It's like, okay.
Wow. What a blessing.
Yeah. And it's doubly awesome because I actually like her. She's cool. But so we're planning to go together. I'm not sure what her why is, but mine is like I've already told you. My why. It took me a while to get to my why. I didn't realize I needed one.
Mhm.
I just thought the call was, the pull to move elsewhere was enough. But, I see now that the why will sustain you when you are like, I don't know. I don't know if things are gonna work out. That why, if it's strong enough, will help you, will ground you and allow you to keep moving forward. So because of that, yes, for when I decided it wasn't Australia,
Mhm.
um, what did it for me was I had a romanticized idea about what life in Australia would be like, what Australian people would be like, and then I met a few, and I
Sorry.
realized,
I'm
I
laughing because I've been to Australia,
realized,
so
so
apologies.
you get it, you get it. Um, yeah, I realized Australia had a lot of the same issues, just with different accents as the US. And I was like, I'm not into it. So Australia quickly got moved off the list. And then I started looking at New Zealand. But as you know, New Zealand is not letting anyone in unless you get like a recommendation from Jesus. So um, that that quickly fell through. And I was trying to figure out just anything. I was trying to figure out if I could get a job with the State Department and see if I could move that way. I was trying everything. Um, and then eventually, after I was looking at the Netherlands, I was looking at Germany, whoever would take me. Um, and it just trying to find pathways, it was complicated. So finally, I settled on Portugal. I decided on Portugal a couple of years ago. And
Mhm.
then this is going to sound really weird, but it started looking really possible. And that freaked me out. So I abandoned it. I was like, oh, I can't do it. It's looking possible, so I'm not going to do it. And I think it was just because I wasn't ready at that time. I wasn't ready to really fully believe and really fully take those steps. I just
Mm.
thought I was ready. And so um, I finally came when I sat down with my list and all the things that I needed, um, decent infrastructure, a place where blind people could travel independently. They had good transportation options because love my sister, but I don't want to be reliant upon her to take me
Mm.
everywhere,
Okay.
um, and things like that. Good health care, good quality of life, all of those things. And Portugal just kept topping the list. And for me, as a dreamer, one of the good things about Portugal is I don't have any romanticized ideas about it. I wasn't
Mm.
even contemplating it. So for me, I think it was a good thing because I could be a little bit or a lot of bit more realistic in making my plans here because I'm not uh, just being idealistic. So,
Mhm. Yeah, and it sounds like you contemplated it, you've looked at different things like you mentioned, the infrastructure, being
mhm,
able to be independent. I'm curious, just staying on the thread of Portugal,
mhm.
um, how have you thought about navigating the language?
So I've actually already started. I have signed up with a for a Portuguese course, and I because for me, being able when I go there, I want to be able to speak well enough that I can understand and be understood. And I want to
Mhm.
also be able to make real connections with people. There's something that bothers me about people when they say, like, oh, you can go here and you can get by on English. That always rubs me the wrong way.
Mhm.
So I knew that learning the language was going to be very important to me. And also, I can't play sighted people charades. You guys can point at things, and you know, things will get you'll be able to understand. I can't play that game, so I need to understand what's being said. I need to
Yeah.
know how to answer, and so I'm like, let me get a head start on that. And I've always loved languages.
Mhm.
And a very if I hear anyone speaking another language, I just get really excited. My sister says I look creepy. She's like, you just start smiling so big. And I'm like, but I love it. It's so awesome. But so this is right up my alley of just learning another language. I never thought it would be Portuguese, but here we go.
Wow. And so how has that been going? Is like any major, I mean, I have some challenges with some of the sounds. So my
Yeah.
mouth is still working on that, tongue mouth agreement, but
Oh my gosh, yes. So I have a problem because I'm not multilingual, but I have studied Spanish and I have studied Italian, and I know enough I know words. If you threw me in a situation and told me to speak, I would freeze up. But I know a lot of words. Um, None of that is helping me in Portuguese. Like none.
Mm,
So because the sounds are completely different.
yeah.
So that's been a struggle, but you know, it'll be fine. It'll all work out eventually.
Oh yeah. I think everything. One thing that I've learned, especially since I've moved here, is and had life challenges like every other human being.
Yeah.
Is that everything does work out the way it was intended to. It may not be on the timeline that you want, right?
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
it all starts to make sense. And so one of the things, and I see Adelia has entered the chat. Hey, Adelia.
Hi,
Um,
Adelia.
and right on time because that was going to be my next question. And so you have like this being Portugal is not your first foray as a traveler. And so you did something pretty spectacular uh, with Adelia
Mhm.
and some of the other fans that I see in the chat. And so I would love it if you would share that with the audience.
So I attended Adelia and Ivana's Reclaim retreat back in November, and that was my very first solo trip, and it was phenomenal. Um, and it went so well that I was telling everyone, like, you guys are making me feel like I could do this like more often. Like I should do this more often, but I don't know. You can't like recreate that type of magic. But
Mm,
it was wonderful, and it was something that honestly a year prior to that I would have never seen myself doing. And it actually wasn't supposed to be that way. I was hoping like my mom or my sister could go with me, but they couldn't. And I had decided that at the beginning of the year. So I don't do New Year's resolutions. I choose words to live by. And my words to live by for 2023 and beyond were courage and intentionality. And right when I was like, yeah, these are my words. And then Adelia's trip came up. I was like, oh
wow.
no, I'm being tested. So when they couldn't go, I had to really rely on my courage and say like, but this speaks to me, and so I need to be courageous and I need to take that chance. And I'm sure I asked all the questions, and just like with you with Nomad Noir, I let them know like, hey, I'm visually impaired because I don't like surprises, and I just assume other people don't like surprises. And I'm just gonna be honest, I'm one hell of a surprise. Like nobody's expecting a blind chick to walk up into their stuff. Like they just aren't. So I feel like paving the way for both of us is going to make things a lot more smoother. So I did that, asked all the questions, was probably very annoying, but in the end it all worked out and it was one of the like best trips of my life, and I'm so grateful that I got the opportunity to do that.
Oh my gosh. You are one fearless lady, let me tell you. And I'm just going to take a moment to read some of the comments from, like I said, the fan club
Oh my gosh.
that went on that trip to El Salvador. DH said, "Hey, after our first time in El Salvador, Olivia is my inspiration."
Aww.
Uh, Adelia says magic, because he used magic to describe reclaim the retreat. And Adelia, keep me honest. I think there are several other reclaim the retreats that are happening for the remainder of 2024. So for those of you who are interested in that, definitely check it out. I will link that in the description of this video for those of you who are catching the replay. And Jan, Janine?
Janine.
Janine, thank
Yeah.
you. Janine said, we definitely had a blast in El
Mhm.
Salvador. Yes. Awesome, awesome,
Mhm.
awesome. Yes. And Jess A had a comment and said, her vision is coming from her heart. And so, another fan, BC, hey, Victoria here. I was just thinking that she is fearless. Yes. Oh my goodness.
Aw.
Let me tell you, you're inspiring us all here, Miss Olivia.
Aw.
And so you you went to El Salvador, and like most people that go on that solo trip, you
Mm.
get you get the bug, and then you're like, okay, I need another country, right? Like
Like, where
it's
else can I do this?
exactly. It starts to be fuel for, the fire. And so as you're like focused on Portugal, because I think your timeline is looking like 2024, 2025.
Yes.
Are you like hyper focused on Portugal, or are you considering, doing some other countries either to scout or holiday? I'm just curious.
Nope, Portugal is it for me. Anywhere else that I go is just going to be for vacation. But Portugal is my focus. I have locked in on that. And I am putting things in place to go on their D8 visa. Um, and oh, I guess I should say another reason I chose Portugal is because it was important to me
Mm.
to move to a country that allowed for dual citizenship with the US, because as much as the US gets on my nerves, I'm not renouncing my citizenship. So I know that eventually I can um, apply for Portuguese citizenship, and not permanent residency is awesome, but you are subject to the whims of things when they change them. And it's my understanding that once I become a Portuguese citizen, I won't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
So I don't want the headache. I want to streamline my life as much as possible. So,
Yeah, yeah. I'm going for citizenship myself, so
mm,
I definitely can relate.
mm,
We'll get back to my questions in a little bit, but I want to get to some of these in the chat, because the chat is just lit up with love for you. So I'm going to start with Helen. Uh, Her question: I want Olivia to know she is not alone. I am also visually impaired. Although not completely blind, I am slowly losing my sight. I can truly relate to your story.
mm.
Thank you for sharing that,
Yes.
Helen.
Thank you, Helen. It's nice to know that you're not alone. Sometimes it just knowing that there's one other person matters.
Absolutely. And Victoria asked, curious to know what your mother feels about the move.
I don't know if she believes me, but my mom is like one of my biggest cheerleaders. So she's just like, hey, is there a place for me to sleep? And I'm like, yes, there's always space for you, Mom. So actually, I've got her thinking about residency in another country now. So
Wow.
I would send her your stuff, and like of course I follow like Stephanie Perry, and I would just send her. I'm like, hey Mom, look at this. And at first she was like, oh, this is cool, but slowly but surely she's like, hey, so the second residency thing, tell me more. I'm like, I'm glad you asked. So she's excited, and my mom loves to travel, so Portugal will be a nice place for her to come visit.
Oh, that definitely, definitely. So I'm also reading in some of the comments. So there's an invite for you to head to Mexico City, but you know the sidewalks are janky, and
That's what I
from what I've heard, I've not traveled to Mexico, but
that
I've also seen like content from Adelia and Rashida about the
yeah.
jankiness of the sidewalks, which I think are worse than the sidewalks in Lisbon.
That is actually what one of my reclaim ladies told me. I was like, listen, I was looking at Mexico City, and she was like, girl, be honest. She like the traffic and the sidewalks. She was like, I have issues with them and I can see. I'm like, say less. I will just come to visit.
Right? It's like, no, 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 no. Actually, in our most recent episode of the Blaxit Global podcast, I had the pleasure of speaking with Penny in June, and Miss Penny was talking about her cooking and Miss Penny's kitchen, and that she took a spill shortly after moving to Portugal and had been laid up for quite a bit. And
I
so
know.
you know these sidewalks, that's why I've been in
No
since
joke.
it's been raining today and it's raining tomorrow. I'm like, I don't even mess with it.
Listen, I'll wait till it dries up.
Exactly, exactly. So how have you been thinking about or given thought to, and then you talked about infrastructure and things like that. There are some differences
Mhm.
between the United States and I would say Europe as a whole, but Portugal's the only country I've lived in thus far.
Right.
And so when I think of, because especially after our conversation about a little over a week ago, I started to think differently about my environment and paying more attention to certain things. So
Mhm.
case in point, in the States, oftentimes there are the curb cuts that indicate that you know you're at the curb at the sidewalk, or the signs that kind of give an audible alert in terms of being able to safely cross the street. I've
Mhm.
not found those in my environment here,
Right.
or if at all, sporadically. I've definitely haven't heard the audible ones. And there's certain areas, I guess, like major streets where there's a visual countdown, but there isn't an audio cue. Um, have you thought about how you'll navigate those challenges?
I have. And so here in the States, we have something called orientation and mobility, which is basically when they teach blind people to navigate using a white cane and a guide dog. I was trying to remember the correct terminology, but we'll just say guide dog. Um, and so they have that over in Portugal as well. And I've been trying to reach out to like the Portuguese Blind Union and things like that to get information. A little slow on the responses, but that's okay. I kind of expected that. But I've been like also reaching out to my O&M instructors from here and asking them if they have any contacts there and how to blind people in Portugal, like how do they get around? Because they do. And so if they can do it, I can learn to do it.
Yeah, they're out here because, and we were
Mm-hmm.
talking about in the conversation. It's like literally it was the day before you reached out to me, and my daughter was still in town, and we were having lunch at the Centro Comercial, and then we were gonna hop on the bus,
Mhm.
a little like maybe like 2 blocks from my normal bus stop, and there was a blind gentleman with a woman, and he had his white cane, and the bus pulled up, and people boarded, and then the driver told him the numbers and to ask him if that was the bus that he was waiting for, and then he said no, he was waiting for the different number bus. But those are some of the things I've seen, and I've also seen blind people either in the metro on the train or navigating coming up or down the stairs. And
Mhm.
so, like you said, it isn't like it's impossible. If they've been able to do it, you can do it too. I have no doubt, especially after this is like our third time talking to one another. Like, if there's anybody who could do this, Olivia could do
I
it.
appreciate your vote of confidence, but you just proved my point as to why I need to learn Portuguese. Because if somebody's shouting out numbers and telling me about a buzz, at present, I'm gonna be like, I don't understand. But I need to be able to at least have that down so I can navigate, independently. And it's those things like that, the mundane, that make the magical possible, really.
It's true. It's true because
Mhm.
every day there's something new, and I've talked about it on here. Like every day there's something new. Every day I do something wrong. Right? Somebody will say something to me, and I'm responding with the wrong response. They'll be like, "Oh, bon dia." I'm like, "Oh, boy, no," and I'm like,
Like,
"No, no, no,
oops,
that's
oops,
wrong."
wrong
Right?
one.
So there'll be some of that, of course. And
Yes.
and and for that, I'd say, give yourself some grace. But you also said at the beginning too, or during our talk, about being clear on your why, and that's something that I probably talk about ad nauseum about being clear on your why, because those are the times where either the words don't come to you, or I missed a train, or I got on the wrong bus and thought it was supposed to go this place and I read it wrong. Like, there are things that are going to happen, and the more that I have been able to have levity about it and just laugh, like,
Mhm.
okay, guess I'm gonna go for a ride. And not beat myself up about it.
Mhm.
It adds to the experience, because then it becomes a story. Like I shared on here a couple weeks ago when I took the wrong bus and
I
wound up
saw that. I was
and
like,
it becomes a story.
yes. Listen, but while you were telling it, I was like, I felt like I was there. So I'm all panicking. I'm like, oh gosh, we're on the wrong bus. Oh gosh, it's dark. Like I was really in, I was all in. And I actually took that back to my group and I was like, I need to be the type of person that when this happens, not if, when it happens, I have you know, the tools, the mental fortitude to like, okay, this is not how I thought this would go, but we can fix it. We can get to where we need to go, and just to basically regroup and, again, like you said, turn it into a story for later.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
the beauty that I think too about my experience in Portugal, and versus, and I don't like comparing, but
Mhm.
I think someone had asked me about, I think on an interview, about you know choosing Portugal versus New Zealand, and like, did it seem like I was settling for one versus another? But one of the things that I think about Portugal and how this ended up being better than I expected, and in that we have such an excellent Black expat community here, right? Like, many of them are in the comments now,
Mhm.
and it's like, it just enriches my spirit and my experience to know that there are people I can lean on, there are people I can hang out with, there are people I can ask questions and not, feel awkward. And so, one of the things that I think will also be, a feather in your cap and fuel for your fire is that you do have a built in community to lean on, right? To hang out
Mhm.
with, to go do things. And so it isn't as potentially isolating as it would have been had it been, in Australia, for example.
Yes, I do look forward to meeting everyone because you guys just seem like you have so much fun. I know that, you know, it's the company, right? It's the people that make the experience, and I just love hearing about how you all show up for each other and support each other. And selfishly, I want to be part of that, and I also want to help add to it, for
Mhm.
new people coming in. So.
Oh yeah. Look, I already know. I already know. It's like we're just gonna have to get ready. So we have another question from Ty. I absolutely love your audacity, Olivia, not letting anything stop you. What would you say you're most concerned about when it comes to moving and living abroad compared to the US?
um, hmm, what am I most concerned about? I would say, um, just figuring out how things work. Um, I watched a video not too long ago of someone who was having issues with the everyday things, like I think their uh, utility company was taking out extra money from their, yeah, it was like that. And in the US, I know how to handle that sort of thing. In
Mhm,
Portugal, I don't. So it's those things of like, yes, that's the thing I will learn, but from the standpoint of um not living there yet, that
mhm,
worries me. And I'm like, how do I handle when things, say I have an issue with my bank? I know how to handle it here. What does that
mhm,
look like over in Portugal? Um,
mhm,
Things like that. So at present, that will probably be it. But I'm sure that, I mean, like everything else, it's surmountable. I will figure it out. Hopefully, I don't have those exact problems, but you know, it's not going to be, it's not going to be a situation where I have no issues like that. So I'm sure I will get a chance to learn and grow and figure it
mhm.
out then. Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's every day. Like I mentioned, every day is something different. Actually, earlier I ordered a couple pieces of furniture for the balcony. Now that the weather's starting to get warm,
Hmm.
and I was like, "Oh, wait." I'm like, "What am I doing next week?" Because this is like one of those countries where you order something, they don't really tell you that it's coming. You just kind of have,
Oh.
you have about 3, maybe 4 days, depending on where you're ordering from, that you can like leave the house. And then after
Mm.
that, you have to just plan to be close to
Just.
home because it's like surprise, surprise. Your stuff either shows up or you can miss it. And so it goes to what you were saying about like figuring out the rhythm and how things
Hmm.
work. And I don't,
Hmm.
this is 5 months in and I'm still, treading water, but each day, like I feel like I get a little bit more confident, a little bit more comfortable
Hmm.
and getting settled. But there are people that have been here several years and it's still right a learning. And I think uh, it was something that I had mentioned maybe a couple of months ago, but I feel like putting yourself in new environments or challenging yourself in different ways. Like I play word games, I start playing Wordle again.
Hmm.
I think especially at, big age, it's like it helps with your brain health as well, right?
It does,
Because
yeah.
things aren't as routine and as rote and as predictable. And the more that you can stretch yourself outside of your comfort zone is one where the magic happens. But two, I
Hmm.
think that just helps with those connection points in your brain because it is continually to flex that muscle and build it that
Hmm.
keeps, you persevering.
I agree. I 100% agree. It keeps the
Awesome.
novelty, yeah.
Yeah, that mental fortitude comes in handy. One of our YouTube channel members are here, Patricia. Olivia's adventures are going and are so encouraging. Awesome woman. Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. I'm going to get to a couple more of these questions in here. Tanya, I have a cousin who is fully vision impaired and travels by himself. He just recently went to the Bahamas and he said it's just the beginning for traveling abroad. Oh, that's awesome,
That is
Tanya.
wonderful.
Wow. I love it. I love it.
I have so much respect for blind people who travel by themselves. Especially if they're totally like it doesn't matter, but when you're totally visually impaired, um, I don't know. I just things I know a lady, she actually went to China. She doesn't
Mm.
speak Mandarin or Cantonese. But she was over there and she went on a solo trip and I was like, you are a beast. You are
Wow.
a beast. I aspire. So that's
Right? Oh my
wonderful.
gosh. That is like next level.
Listen, I agree.
Yes, yes. And just as, are you using a relocation service and immigration attorney?
Just I'm using everyone I can afford because this is not something I want to do on my own and get wrong. So I did attend the Move to Portugal Summit, which I highly, highly recommend. Um, Thanks for that, by the way, Krishan and our
Oh,
Black
well,
Utopia.
our
um,
pleasure.
it was everything you need to know. And because of that, I have a lot of people lined up that when the time comes, um, yeah, I'm gonna be paying everyone, but that's okay because I know that it'll be money well spent.
Mhm. Absolutely. And it's one of those things like, especially, when you want to get out, like
You will do
you want to
whatever.
make sure you get it done right.
Yes.
And I had to, somebody who's like or recovering super independent person, right? Like I'm realizing that my hyper independence was little too much. I had to
Yeah.
learn to like delegate and pay people for their
Uh huh.
expertise because I was
Listen.
like, I don't need to be doing all this. I can, but I don't
Mm-mm.
want to.
But you don't want to, and there it
Mhm.
is.
Exactly. Belinda, Olivia mentioned that she's going to be having her sister accompany her, and possibly, look, mom might be coming in sometime as
Listen,
a fast follow.
she might surprise me.
Right? Exactly. Um, let's see. Let me see. Were there any other questions that we have? More comments. Definitely lots of comments. Pisces Pratt said, "I'm in awe. I really can't even imagine." And Andrea says, "Olivia, I love your spirit and positivity. Your smile makes me smile."
Aw, thank you.
Yes, yes, awesome. Let me go back to mine. Oh, this one is interesting. So, I mean, obviously, right? You're an inspiration on so many levels, but for someone who is either similarly impaired or has another disability in either has had this dream of moving abroad, or maybe it's just like one of those things that just came into their mind.
Mhm.
What would you say to, or what advice would you give?
I would say if you really are feeling led to do this, or whatever terminology resonates with you,
Mhm.
know that it is possible, even if you don't have all the steps mapped out. And you can build a bridge from where you are to where you want to be. It might take some ingenuity. You'll have to do things a little bit different than a person without a disability, but you can do it. It might take you some time, but it is possible.
Yes, absolutely. And Jess had asked, I love that, by the way. Um, Jess asked, do you read Braille?
Yes, I read Braille and print, but Braille is it's my go-to.
Hmm. So I'm curious, I guess, as a follow up with that, and also because you were talking about the other traveler that went to China, and
Mhm.
when I'm in a store or trying to sometimes make sense of my environment, I rely heavily on my phone. And
Mhm.
so, what devices do you use, or maybe can, because, like, for example, to be like better articulated, so sometimes when I'm in a store and I'm looking for something, an ingredient, because I'm still
Mhm.
learning like the names of the things, like I know y'all have spices, but like what do you call it?
What?
And
Yes.
and so I'm like using Google Translate, etc. And
Mhm.
so, have you thought about, or are there devices that you maybe even used in some of your solo travel pursuits to help you with translation when you need to make sense of something in your immediate environment?
So uh, one of the key things about choosing a country like Portugal, this is it will dovetail, I promise. Um, is to be in a place where if I needed to ask someone for something, I could do so and it would be socially acceptable. Because believe it or not, there are countries where people with disabilities are avoided because there's a belief that, interactions might, be bad luck or things like that. Maybe not so much in the cities, but beliefs they're hard to change. So I wanted to go to a country where that was less likely to be a thing, and that's one of the reasons I chose Portugal. So if I were out independently and I needed to ask someone something, in the store, I could reasonably expect to get assistance.
Mhm.
Um, as far as apps go, I can also use Google Translate. Um, and there are blindness specific apps. There's one called Seeing AI
Mm.
that you can take pictures of things. It can, uh, well, I don't actually know if it scans product labels in other countries. I've never tried it. But you can scan a label and it'll tell you, what the product is and things like that. There's also Be My Eyes, which is an app where you can call and there are volunteers on the other line and they look through your camera and you can be like, hey, what am I looking at? I've used them. I remember I was in Iceland a couple years ago and I couldn't read the remote and I was trying to work the TV. So I called Be My Eyes and some really cool dude with an English accent walked me through where the buttons were and what to press, and it was very helpful. So they do have apps out there that are very helpful.
Oh, wow. Be My Eyes. And you
Mhm.
said the other one was CAI?
Seeing AI.
Being AI. Okay.
Hmm.
I will try to link. I will see if I can find the links, but add those also in the description of this video, because those are great resources
For sure.
to help.
Hmm.
And this is more of a comment. Tanya said, "Oh, Olivia, if you're being bold and leaving, the rest of us can get it out. The rest of us can get out of here too."
Let's go. Let's all go.
Yes, let's all, right, like, right, because it's not to digress into something negative, but it's like it's just wild. It's just wild. It's just wild. And
Just know that we're
so,
on the same page there.
yes, exactly, exactly. And Joyful One said, technology is wonderful. It is, as much as, sometimes it can be a distraction. Those are
Mhm.
times where, like, there are benefits to technology in our society, right? We're coming to you, you're enjoying this conversation from wherever you are in the world because of technology.
Mhm.
And for people that have different abilities, they're able to, continue to live independently or seek different services
Mhm.
because of assisted devices and technology. And so that's why this is really important.
Yes, I will say that even in my lifetime, 80s baby, 90s kid here, and there's been so much development just since I was a child. Like I used to have this giant it was called a visual tech or a CCTV, which is not the CCTVs everyone else is used to, but you would put like
Hmm.
a piece of paper under it, and it would have a camera and a screen, and so it would reflect, and you could enlarge the print. Those things used to be huge. Now it's an app on my phone,
Wow.
right? And it's just and they went from like the giant ones to the handheld ones, and now it's an app. And so it's just technology has come such a long way, and it can be very helpful when it works. When it doesn't, problems. But when it works, it's very, very useful and can really add to your independence.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely, absolutely. Another a comment. Karen Louise said Olivia's resilience and her joy in getting things done is everything. She
Mhm.
reassures us that where there is a will, there is a way. Yes, indeed. And Teresa, who was here a few weeks ago, said she wants to be your neighbor.
Listen, I've got several cities lined up for my scouting trip, so that could possibly happen. We don't
Yeah,
know.
and Malcolm, who is here, he said, "Join us." He's in Blaxit Global Passport. He said, "Join us."
I
Definitely,
I just
definitely.
might. I just might.
Yes. So you've got as we start to like round up the
Mhm.
conversation, so you have plans. Obviously, we're in the beginning of 2024.
Mhm.
You've talked about 2024, possibly 2025, but
Mhm.
it sounds like, especially from this conversation, that you're really trying to get the ball rolling for 2024.
Yes, ma'am.
When are you expecting to do your visit?
So my visit, my sister and I think my mom is coming on that one, but we're all going to we'll be there in November. I was hoping to make Nomad Noir work, but unfortunately I can't do it. But
Mhm.
November is when I will be in Portugal and getting to know my new country. I'm putting that out there in the universe. Okay.
Yes, as you should.
Yes.
As you should, as you
Mhm.
should. Anya has said, Olivia is a brave soul. I am enlightened and grateful for attending this interview. Thanks, Miss Krishan and Miss Olivia. I feel blessed.
Oh,
Thank you,
thank
Anya.
you.
And Yoga Bliss Dance asked, what cities and places are you considering? Are you considering Lisbon proper? That's a great question. Like, are you considering Lisbon proper? Have you thought about some of the other cities or parts of the city actually, that has different terrain? Because there are parts of the city that are flat.
Mhm.
There's parts of the city, like I'm thinking specifically Campo de Arique,
Mhm.
where it's very flat and very wide sidewalks compared to
Oh,
the rest of Portugal. Even where I live, it's wider sidewalks and pretty flat. Like I don't really have any inclines.
I love that. Um, yes, I want to stay near Lisbon, but whatever, I don't have any city like picked out yet or any neighborhood exactly picked out, but I do know I want to stay within about an hour of Lisbon.
Hmm.
Definitely Lisbon's airport. So,
Yes, it is very helpful. I'm in
mhm.
close proximity and love that about being here. It's like when I want to
Yes,
get somewhere, I don't have to worry about, trains or anything like that. Or when people come to visit, it's like when my daughter was
exactly.
here a couple weeks ago, and I was just like, oh, let me know when you're in passport control. Because, like, I don't need to be like in the States, it's like, oh, I land and it takes like an hour to get. I'm like, no, just let me
Mhm.
know when you're at passport control. I'll be there in like 5 minutes.
Yes. Yes. I won't lie. I have gotten spoiled because here in Ohio, I live like 15 minutes away from the airport. And I'm
Wow.
just like, I need this in my life. Like
Yeah.
this is the thing I would like to recreate over in Portugal. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, and I see in the comments quite a few people that are doing their scouting trip, so they might be rolling through when you come through in November or earlier.
awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
Oh, great. Well, Olivia, I'm not going to hold you any longer. I want to thank you for being a guest tonight. And like I said, you've been inspiring on so many levels. And I know, just judging by, the chat roll, that you are an inspiration to all of the people that are watching live and those who will be watching the replay. So I just want to thank you for being super generous with your time, very inspiring and transparent with your journey.
Thank you so much for having me and giving me this opportunity, Krishan. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. And I can't wait till you come and we can hang out.
Yes, ma'am. I'm excited. I will buy you lunch.
Aw, you're so sweet. Oh my gosh, you're awesome. So thank you all for watching. I look forward to seeing you all next Thursday. While you're here, if you wouldn't mind, hit the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe to the channel. And be sure to listen for the next episode of the Blaxit Global Podcast, which airs on Monday. Ciao.